Hey guys, another update time on the m1070. I made a bit more progress over the last couple of days. I've basically gone from step 7 now to step 11. Okay, so I've done a few more pages and you can actually see some progress on the chassis now. Okay, I skipped ahead a little bit because all you're really missing was the fourth axle, which is the same drills as the other 3 axles that we've already put on. Okay, so instead of doing another video on another axle, it's the same script. Okay, but there is a couple of bits I'll point out once we get onto the actual model itself that you may need to be aware of, particularly when it comes to the prop shafts. Okay, so there's not much else to tell you really about that. Stage 8 then. Fitting the shock absorbers, we've done that now in the front. We'll talk about that in a second, particularly the rear ones. Okay, what we've also done is we've added the stabilizer bars on the axles. Again, that's something else I need to point out to you. The placement of the stabilizer arms to self-level the axles off as well. Again, once we get onto the actual model itself, I'll show you what I'm on about with that. And stage 10, we've completed all the work down the side of the actual chassis now. We've got the steering arm, we've got that placed in. We've got the fuel tank bracing on, oil filter, fuel filter, whatever it is, on the side. Shock absorbers, all the little tubes and everything that are on the side off the airbags, the photo etch step. We've got the fuel and fuel tanks and oil tanks and everything completed, and I've also completed down the other side of the chassis pretty much the same thing. Spare wheel holder, fuel tank supports there, and the airlines and recovery hitch on the front there. We've got all that squared away. So the next update after this one is going to be step 11, which is going to be the radiator, the top supports for the fuel tank, and the ramps for the trailer. Okay, so moving back then onto the actual vehicle itself. Here's the progress I've made on my particular build. So it's got all the components fitted on now, as per the instructions. So there's a general overview. This is where you should be at the same stage as where I'm at now. There's the little airlines and everything in the front of the bumper down there. Let's try and zoom that in. There you go. We'll talk about that more in a second or so. But the main things I need to really point out to you at this point on this build is the axles, to be honest. Following the instructions, as it shows you how to put all these pieces on in a sequence, what I've noticed is some of the prop shafts cause a misalignment. You can't not put these pieces here and here, and these ones here, and again here, etc. They've got their set points. Okay, so you can't not get it wrong. However, when you start putting the prop shafts on, it does actually twist the axle slightly. Now on mine, what I've noticed is the prop shafts down here. This one was a little bit shorter, longer than it needed to be, which created this axle to be kinked a little bit. Okay, now it doesn't sound bad. However, because this particular model is over-engineered, when it comes on to fit in certain pieces, for example, if we go to the other side, we've got this bracing bars here. We've got the bracing bar here, here, and there. Okay, what you can see going on here, let's try and zoom that in a bit better. There you go. It's squint. The reason that's gone squint on the rear axle is this piece that's going in on top here, and if we look on the instructions, I'll show you exactly what piece it is. Oops. If you look at that piece there, it's this piece. You've got to put them on all 3 rear axles, okay? You've got to make sure that that thing is straight when you put it onto your build. When you build it, it goes in a little hole, it slots in, it follows the curvature of the axle, and you'll think it's straight. As soon as you put it onto the actual vehicle itself, as you can see on mine, it's not entirely straight. So because this piece down here is bent, it's misaligned this piece here, okay, which then has a knock-on effect to the rest of it. Let's try and get some light in there. So as you can see down here, it's slightly kinked when that should be straight, which in effect has made that too short for here, because that ball should be on the top of there. Moving along, because of that, it's knocked this one out slightly. It's knocked this one out slightly. See, it's slightly not straight, which again has moved the entire axle assembly. So this piece was a little bit tricky to get to its actual position, resulting in having to twist and kink the actual the actual axle underneath it. Okay, and the front, this one's fairly straight, along with this bracing bar here. That all fits perfectly. However, the prop shaft, front and back on this last axle, caused this entire axle to go from straight to slightly kinked. Okay, because the long drive shaft is slightly a little bit too large for the actual gap. Okay, now you might come back and say, oh, it's because your other axles are out of place or whatever. You can't put them any other place. There's no movement. Once you've got all these bracing supports, this one, and this one, it can only go in set places, and it locates the axles where they need to be. Okay, you've got no room for movement with it. So the only thing I can suggest when you're building this, instead of following the instructions, I would have all 3 rear axles off the assembly, fully complete, ready to go on, and fit all the prop shafts first. Okay, once you've fitted the prop shafts, then try and get them aligned. Okay, you might find it a bit easier that way, because I really did struggle getting that prop shaft on, purely because the actual prop shaft itself was too long, and it was kinking, causing a fit issue with this. Okay, the way I got around it in the end, all of these are fairly loose because I've never glued these pieces to allow for the movement. I've had to glue these here in these locations with a clamp on both sides to try and straighten it up. Okay, which in effect has actually bent the prop shaft a little bit. So I don't think it's an issue with the kit. I think it's just an issue with being over-engineered, because the detail on there is absolutely ridiculous, considering you're not going to see most of it when you've got the trailer on top. Okay, and when it comes to the bracing supports, the only thing like I said, is be very cautious of these. When you put them on the actual axle, they do look straight. Okay, I promise you they'll look straight. When it comes to fitting onto here, they're not as straight as what they need to be. Okay, so just to get your alignment sorted out, if you remember back to the first video, we had the supports on the inside of the chassis, where those bars locate, and I wasn't too sure if it was correct or not. And yeah, it is correct, because the other side, it actually connects to the top of the axles. Okay, so to save having an issue like I've had, I'd maybe test fit all of this to make sure you get all these pieces perfectly aligned. Okay, it might sound as though I'm rabbiting and waffling, but I'm just trying to save you making the same mistake that I've done here. It's not going to be an issue on mine. You're not going to see that anyhow, because I'm going to have the trailer on. But if you were to do something with the trailer off, it would look a little bit daft with these being slightly cockeyed. Okay, and for the rivet counters out there, I'm sure they'd only be too happy to point out that they don't look right because they're bent. Okay, so that's pretty much the progress I've made on this so far then. Spare wheel and fuel tanks and everything are on there. Add a little bit of a cock up on the front. These are your airlines at the front here. Okay, let's try and zoom that in, get a better picture for you. It's pretty hard to do one-handed. But you've got your airlines here and here. And then in the centre is a little piece that goes in there. I actually dropped mine and lost it. It's gone to the carpet god. So I've just used a little piece of sprue to cover the hole up there. And try and put a little bit of detail there. The actual piece that was there was absolutely tiny anyway. So you're not really going to lose anything if you lose that piece and just do what I've done and put a little bit of sprue to cover the hole up. Okay. Other areas, steering arm on the inside here. That was a fairly easy fix. There's a hole at the back on the axle around about here where this locates. You stick it onto this piece here, and that obviously sticks into position there. Okay. I found it easier to fit this outer piece to the bar first and then glue it into the location in behind that actuator. I wish this camera had auto zoom on it, however no. And then locate that piece to the actual chassis itself, because that pin getting into that hole, that pin getting into that hole there is a really snug fit. Okay, so it might be worth doing that, fitting this piece to the bar first, gluing it to the back of there, and then gluing it into position here. They're fairly straightforward for the fuel tanks. I've got my first bit of photo etch on there, the little step on the support here for the suspension units. All of that's fairly straightforward. All of the fit is pretty good. Rear steering arm here, again, I found it easier gluing this piece to here first to get the alignment, sticking that piece on loose, bending it to fit, and then just tacking it in, and then it fits pretty well. Okay, now something I need to point out to you on the suspension actually. Again, I'm not sure if it was me or if it's down to the kit. You've got to fit the shock absorbers on the inside, front and rear. So this is the rear shock absorber, no issues with that one whatsoever. However, on this side, you've got the shock absorber fit here, and then you've got this bracket, or this step, or whatever it is here, that actually stops the bottom of that locating into the pin. As you can see, mine's glued to the other underside of the pin. It's not located in the hole, and that is purely because that bracket is in the way. How you get around that, seeing what I'm seeing now, I'd probably maybe cut a notch out of here for that to locate into that slot properly. Otherwise, you're not going to do it. Again, you can't, you've got no movement on the axles, it only fits where it fits. So I'd maybe trim this piece here, certainly in the corner, to give you a little bit of excess room to get the bottom of that shock absorber located into that hole down there. If you can see where the X-Acto is, that hole just there, you should be okay with that. Again, it's not a major drama, you're not going to see it on mine, but it's one of those things I'll point out. I know it's there, so to save you any hassles, I'll just show it to you. And that's pretty much where I'm at the minute with this. The only things else I've completed the fuel tanks, got the photo etch steps on. Some with these, when you're building it, when you get to the actual stage on the diagram for it, as you can see here, it is a really good idea to place a piece on top, like so, and then try and line up the diagram to the picture for your spacing on the steps. Okay, otherwise it's going to go horribly wrong. You go off steps in places where the fuel cap's not going to fit. Same with this, that locates on the top, and then you just line up your pieces to the actual diagram. It's in 1:1 scale, and then you'll get the perfect fitting for your steps on the fuel tanks. And that's where I'm at the minute, guys. So the next update is going to be probably page 11, the radiator and the ramps for the trailer at the back. Probably step 12 as well, which is all the accessories, air tanks, battery boxes and the like, fifth wheel and assemblies, more air tanks, etc, etc. And I will probably get step 13. Yeah, I'll probably get 13 and 14 out of the way as well, which is fitting the fuel tanks, and starting on the bonnet for the headlights and everything. Okay. Again, any questions, any dramas, any hints, tips, advice, if any of you built this and know where I've gone wrong with these axles or whatever, leave comments in the comment section. And that's pretty much it for now, guys. So thanks for your time again. Sorry it was a bit rushed and I might have been waffling a little bit on that one. But it's coming together. So thanks for your time, guys, and I'll speak to you later on.